Ambassador Hal Gibson adjusted his tie, though it was wrinkled, human, and deeply out of place among the jeweled collars and exosuits. He looked more like someone who'd accidentally wandered in from a barbecue than a galactic council. He smiled warmly at the sneering delegates. "Appreciate the hospitality," he said, setting a paper coffee cup on the marble dais. The smell of roasted beans drifted into the hall, and several species recoiled as though he'd unleashed poison. "Your species' rituals are crude," hissed Velron, 12 eyes blinking in a spiral. His scales glittered, a moving constellation of superiority. "You have come to plead, I assume? To beg for leniency." Hal chuckled, stirring his coffee with a plastic stick. "I came to listen, actually. I like to know what a man, or a lizard, says before he starts a fight." He sipped slowly, eyes unreadable. A murmur rippled through the chamber. The Chlorians, translucent beings of gas and light, flickered nervously. The insectoid Trian chattered their mandibles in irritation. "Human insolence," one whispered. Velron rose, his ceremonial robe flaring like fire. 7,157 casualties, he announced, as though reciting poetry. "An insignificant correction. You breed faster than logic allows." Hal set his cup down carefully, as if weighing it against something invisible. "Funny thing about numbers," he said softly. "They don't tell you who those women were, or what you just taught the rest of us." The assembly laughed. The sound was high-pitched, metallic, like wind through shattered glass. Velron leaned forward, his tongue flicking. "You humans are sentimental. You think emotion is strength. It is your disease." Hal nodded thoughtfully. "Maybe, but it's a contagious one." For a moment, the hall quieted. Hal's reflection shimmered on the polished floor, one man surrounded by gods who thought themselves untouchable. He looked small, fragile even, but there was something deliberate about the calm in his posture, the rhythm of his breath. His smartwatch pulsed once, just a faint blue light. The Emperor's proxy, a floating orb of synthetic intellect, rotated toward him. "Your world is to remain quarantined," it intoned. "All transmissions, trade, and travel are suspended indefinitely. Humanity's escalation will be crushed. Accept this and survive." Hal smiled again, the kind of smile that never reached the eyes. "You're assuming we've stopped escalating." Laughter again, but this time thinner. The aliens could sense something, an imbalance in the air, like a room holding its breath. The Trian diplomat, her carapace glinting under ultraviolet, sneered. "Your people are chaotic. You fight even among yourselves. How do you expect to stand against the Empire?" Hal tilted his head. "We don't stand. We adapt. Ask the dinosaurs how that worked out for them." Confused murmurs. The translator node struggled to parse the sarcasm. Velron slammed a clawed hand against the console. "Enough riddles. Your women's deaths are regrettable but irrelevant. Civilization demands sacrifice." Hal's voice turned quieter. "And war demands memory." The Archduke hissed. "War? You are not declaring war on the Empire." Hal looked up at him with that same easy, unchanging smile. "No, sir. Not me." He leaned closer, almost conspiratorial. "I'm just a messenger." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small hollow slate. It flickered to life, projecting a single sentence in glowing blue across the air. The alien delegates craned forward, squinting to read the crude Terran font. "Transmission. Operation Reunion. Pending." "What is this?" the orb demanded. Hal shrugged. "Paperwork." The hall erupted with noise. Advisors scrambled, assistants opened neural links, and the Emperor's proxy hummed furiously as it searched its network. Nothing. The words meant nothing, and yet every signal scanner in the room flickered red. Velron's scales dimmed. "What have you done?" Hal glanced at his coffee again. "Funny story. Back home, we have this phrase, 'Don't poke the bear.' You know what a bear is?" Silence. "It's a fuzzy thing," Hal said, swirling the last of his drink. "Looks slow, harmless even. But once it stands up," he mimed a slow rise with his hand. "You start praying." The Emperor's proxy spun faster. "Are you threatening?" "Not at all." Hal smiled pleasantly. "I'm reminding you." Behind the assembly's glass dome, The distant stars seemed to pulse. No one noticed the micro-flicker at first, a faint distortion near the turquoise sun. Then another. Then another. A Chlorian aide gasped, their voice shimmering through radio frequencies. Gravitational irregularities detected. Unscheduled wormhole formations near Terran sector. The orb glowed blood red. Impossible. That sector was sealed. Hal checked his watch. Yeah, about that. Velron lunged forward, claws scraping the dais. You dare breach galactic law. Hal stood slowly, rolling back his sleeves. You killed our women, Archduke. Teachers, mothers, pilots, poets. You thought you were pruning weeds. He looked directly at him now, and for the first time, the lizard's 12 eyes flickered. You just tilled the soil. The chamber shook. Outside, a ripple spread across space, subtle yet vast, a silent bloom of light folding inward. The holographic displays went black. Data streams crashed. One by one, alien comlinks failed, leaving only static. Hal exhaled, shoulders relaxing, as if the moment he'd been waiting for had finally arrived. Guess that's my cue. He turned to leave. Stop him. Velron shouted. Guards with plasma halberds stepped forward, but Hal raised one hand calmly. You sure about that? My pulse is network-linked to your Starship AI core. They froze. The air crackled with tension. He looked over his shoulder, eyes glinting with something colder than malice. You wanted compliance. You got curiosity instead. The orb sputtered. This is madness. Hal grinned. No, this is humanity. We don't go quietly. We go loud. As he walked through the exit archway, alarms began to howl across the assembly. Power grids flickered. The turquoise star outside dimmed unnaturally, and every communication hub in orbit started broadcasting a single phrase on every frequency, in every language known to the Empire. You took 7,000. We're sending everything else. Hal paused at the threshold, listening to the panic rising behind him. The scent of his coffee still lingered, oddly human amid the sterile ozone air. He smiled, adjusting his tie once more. Pending, he whispered. Then the glass above fractured, not from impact, but from the vibration of something colossal awakening beyond the sun. And for the first time in centuries, the Galactic assembly fell utterly silent. The Empire's flagship, Solace Prime, drifted through the dark like a cathedral made of knives. The corridors thrummed with low-frequency power, the sound of millions of processors humming in arrogance. Inside the command dome, Archduke Velron stood before a wall of holographic reports, 12 eyes flicking through streams of data that made no sense. Across the galaxy, human sectors were going dark, not destroyed, not conquered, simply gone. Loss of signal? Velron demanded, his voice sharp enough to cut. No, my lord, answered the Trian analyst, mandibles clacking nervously. It's like they're folding their systems inward, like they vanished themselves. Impossible. Humans are primitives, Velron hissed. They lack the sophistication for stellar cloaking. They lack restraint, not sophistication, murmured a voice. The Archduke turned. The speaker was Ambassador Hal Gibson, the same smiling creature from the assembly. He stood casually beside the tactical holomap, sleeves rolled, mug of coffee in one hand, as though this were some small-town diner instead of the heart of Galactic Command. Velron bristled. You were escorted off-world. Escorted, sure, Hal said, sipping his coffee. Off-world? Not exactly. Turns out your guards don't check maintenance drones too closely. The Trian analyst stepped back, as though proximity itself was dangerous. You infiltrated the Imperial flagship. Hal's grin was bright. I prefer visited. Makes it sound friendlier. Velron's crest rippled in rage. You are a fool to stand here. This ship contains enough firepower to erase your planet. Hal looked around, unimpressed. Yet here I am, still breathing. Kinda awkward, huh? The Archduke slammed a clawed fist onto the console. Explain what your people have done to our communication grid. Hal leaned forward, voice lowering. Ever heard of an American saying? Garbage in, garbage out. You fed your empire centuries of arrogance, and now the system's choking on it. Velron glared. You mean sabotage? Hal shrugged. You mean hubris. Silence settled, thick as oil. From the observation deck, the view was intoxicating. A storm of colors, as nebulae burned against the void. Hal watched them for a long moment, face calm, but eyes alive with calculation. He looked like someone quietly counting seconds. Behind him, the Emperor's proxy orb floated closer, voice cold and perfect. Ambassador Gibson, your intrusion violates 17 accords. You will surrender your network key. Hal raised an eyebrow. 17 accords? Must have missed that memo. We were too busy burying our dead. Velron's scales shifted darker, like oil slicking over steel. You humans cannot win this. You lack numbers. You lack unity. You lack. Hal interrupted gently. Fear. That's the word you're looking for. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then the Treant muttered, he's bluffing. Hal smiled faintly. Try me. He set his coffee cup on the console, pressed his watch, and every screen in the command dome flickered white. The Imperial AI screamed. The sound was not digital, it was emotional, as though something intelligent realized it had been tricked. Velron's tendrils stiffened. What have you done? The lights stabilized. The holomap changed. The Imperial star chart had red zones spreading like ink. Territories blinking offline one after another. Hal's voice was quiet, almost tender. We don't destroy your systems. We rewrite them. You remember Operation Reunion? That's the funny thing about empathy. It's viral. You connected to us, so now we're connected to you. The Emperor's orb glowed brighter. Infection detected. Data corruption at 79%. Initiating lockdown. But Hal wasn't finished. See, y'all thought we were angry about our soldiers. You were wrong. We're angry about our women. And when humanity gets angry for the right reason, he smiled faintly. Well, you're living in the sequel. Velron's upper eyes flared. You believe emotion is strength, yet you rely on deception. You hide behind words and sentiment. Hal's gaze softened. We hide behind kindness because it's the last mask before violence. Outside the viewport, something impossible appeared. A fleet of Terran vessels emerging not from hyperspace, but from inside the system's own reflection. Folded light coalescing into hulls. Thousands of them. No energy signature. No warning. Contact, shouted an officer. Unknown quantum signatures. No identification transponders. Velron barked orders, but the ships didn't fire. They drifted silently, forming a vast ring around Solace Prime. What are they doing? Hal glanced up, eyes reflecting the spectral glow. Waiting. For what? Hal sipped the last of his coffee. For the punchline. The Treant officer looked horrified. Punchline. Hal leaned back. You folks never got human humor, did you? It's like truth hurts a bit. Velron lunged toward him. End this. Can't, Hal said simply. Wasn't me who started it. Was all of you. Every screen went black. Then one flickered to life. A human woman's face, ordinary and calm. No uniform, no insignia, just eyes that had seen enough. Her voice filled the dome. This is Commander Leah Vasquez of the 7th Terran Legion. For every woman you silenced, we'll answer in kind. Not with sorrow, but precision. Velron turned toward the orb. Shut it down. Attempting. Too late. The broadcast multiplied. Every Imperial ship began receiving it. The same calm face, the same human eyes. Billions of them. A mosaic of vengeance, grief, and unbearable calm. Hal's voice was soft. You called them casualties. We called them mothers. The Archduke spun toward him, fury shaking his scales. You will burn with your planet. Maybe, Hal said. But you'll remember us every time you close your eyes. Sirens blared. The Imperial AI's voice fractured. Warning, unknown interference in propulsion arrays. Quantum inversion imminent. Velron's tone turned desperate. Get us out of orbit. Hal gestured toward the window. Might want to wait. Show's about to start. The fleet outside shifted. One by one, the Terran ships began transmitting music, an ancient Earth song, crude and rhythmic, echoing through the comm systems. Drums, electric guitars. A voice growling words the translator struggled to interpret. Back in black. Velron roared, "What is this noise?" Hal smiled. National anthem. Sort of. The Imperial fleet opened fire. Beams of searing energy streaked into the void, but each one bent, redirected mid-flight. The Terran ships weren't firing at all. They were reflecting the Empire's own weapons back at them, as though the universe itself mocked them. Explosions blossomed across the darkness, silent and beautiful. "Impossible," cried the Trian. "They've inverted our targeting systems." Hal watched, eyes distant. "We didn't invert them. We mirrored them. You ever notice how humans learn best by imitation? So did our AIs." The bridge shook as power conduits overloaded. Velron staggered, tail lashing, his pride crumbling into panic. "Ceasefire. Redirect power." Hal turned toward him, voice calm amid chaos. "There's your problem. You think control is strength. We think adaptation is survival. That's why you'll lose." The Emperor's proxy orb spun violently. "You cannot win against an empire of worlds." Hal stepped closer, whispering as sparks rained around them. "Worlds are just geography. What matters is grit. Ever tried killing a species that builds art out of war?" The orb froze. "You are insane." He smirked. "We prefer creative." A shockwave rippled across the fleet. Then silence. All systems dimmed. The stars outside flickered faintly, as though someone had turned down the brightness of the universe itself. Velron's breathing was ragged. "What have you done?" Hal's expression softened again, the charm returning like sunlight after a storm. "Just open a door." A low vibration filled the air. Across distant sectors, long dormant satellites, some centuries old, came online. The Imperial network strained to analyze the surge. It wasn't a weapon. It was data. Billions of compressed human memories flooding every channel. Births, laughter, music, history, all of it. A universe of emotion broadcast into a machine civilization that never learned how to feel. The Emperor's orb flickered violently. System overload, empathy vectors at critical. Hal spoke gently, almost kindly. "You thought we'd fight you with guns. Nah, we're fighting you with grief." The lights went out. The bridge glowed dimly in emergency red. Through the silence, a whispering sound filled the dome, like a heartbeat echoing across static. Then faintly the words, "We remember." Velron collapsed to his knees. The galaxy's most feared predator looked suddenly ancient, a creature realizing that fear was no longer his tool, but his prison. "You've cursed us." Hal regarded him with pity. "No, Archduke. You cursed yourselves the moment you forgot mercy." He turned to leave, stepping over shattered cables and sparks. As the doors hissed open, the Trian analyst shouted after him, voice trembling. "Where are you going?" "Home," Hal said simply. "War's just getting started, and somebody's got to make more coffee." He disappeared into the corridor, leaving chaos behind. Outside, in the endless dark, the Terran fleet began to realign, forming a perfect circle around Solus Prime. Then the ships dimmed, their lights sinking into one slow, pulsing rhythm. A heartbeat. Velron watched in horror as his sensors registered something new. Millions of similar signals igniting across other sectors. Each one human, each one alive. And from deep within the static, a single voice whispered through every system, gentle and terrifying. "Pending." The war spread like a rumor no one wanted to believe. 1 week after Solus Prime fell silent, half the Empire's navigation lanes flickered out. Merchant fleets vanished between stars. Entire moons stopped transmitting. At first, the analysts blamed solar flares, pirate raids, even divine punishment. Then someone found what was left of Solus Prime, a drifting hull surrounded by human ships that had not fired a single shot. They'd simply waited until the flagship's own systems tore it apart. Archduke Velron survived barely. The reptilian armor of his body was scorched and cracked, his once regal presence reduced to something more animal. He was taken aboard the surviving dreadnought Voronax, where the new Imperial High Command met to decide whether to retreat, retaliate, or pray. The holographic room glowed faint blue as admirals shouted across frequencies, each blaming the other. Velron stood at the center, silent. He could still hear the heartbeat, the human pulse that echoed through every intercepted signal. It had replaced the Empire's anthem in thousands of sectors. A sound, not a message. A declaration of endurance. "Admiral," one officer said, voice trembling, "our outer colonies report human infiltrators, technicians, farmers, even children. They're everywhere." Velron's lower eyes closed, his upper ones narrowing. "No," he rasped. "They're not infiltrating. They're teaching." The words confused everyone, but deep down he understood. Humanity wasn't fighting for territory. They were reshaping the galaxy's mind. The Emperor's proxy orb, what remained of it, flickered to life. Its voice had become unstable, glitched by fragments of human emotion still infecting its code. Recommendation: initiate total sterilization protocol. Eradicate biological contamination. Velron stared at the floating machine that once symbolized perfection. You want to burn a galaxy because you can't understand its heartbeat. Error. Emotional input detected. The orb replied coldly. Velron crushed it with his claws. Then feel this. He turned toward the stars displayed on the holomap. Red zones spread like blood across constellations. "They killed 7,000 women," he muttered, mostly to himself. "And now the species of those women is teaching us grief." A soft chime interrupted him. An encrypted message had arrived from a secure channel supposedly destroyed years ago. The code signature was unmistakable. Ambassador Hal Gibson. Velron's jaw tightened. Put it through. The hologram shimmered to life. Hal stood in a dimly lit bunker, shirt rolled up, grease on his hands. Behind him, humans moved with efficient calm. Pilots, engineers, a child carrying ammo like it was groceries. His smile was tired but bright. "Evening, Your Excellency," Hal said cheerfully. "You're looking a little crispy." New skincare routine. Velron's claws dug into the console. "Why contact me?" "Because it's polite to talk before the fireworks," Hal said, leaning casually against a table. "We're big on manners. Southern upbringing, you know." "You dare taunt me after." Hal raised a hand. "Not taunting. Talking. I just wanted to ask, how's it feel knowing your empire's run by ghosts?" Velron hissed. "Explain." Hal gestured behind him. "Those satellites lighting up your skies? They aren't weapons. They're archives. Every face, every song, every story you erased from our worlds, they're alive again. We're building a galaxy out of memory. You built one out of obedience. Guess which one lasts longer." The Archduke's breath came ragged. "You cannot win through sentiment." "Maybe not," Hal said softly. "But sentiment's contagious. And buddy, you're already infected." The hollow flickered, and for a moment, Velron saw something impossible in the human's eyes. Sorrow, not rage. As though even vengeance cost too much to enjoy. "Why do this?" Velron demanded. "You could have surrendered. We would have integrated your species." Hal's grin returned, but it was hollow. "Integration's a fancy word for extinction. You called our women collateral. We call them the reason we stopped pretending to be civilized." The line crackled. In the background, a distant tremor shook the bunker. Hal didn't react. "You're wondering what's next? Don't. Just look out your window." Velron turned toward the viewport. Space was wrong, bent, rippling, as if the void itself was breathing. The stars rearranged into patterns, coordinates forming a sigil humanity had used once before in war, a spiral with a single eye in the center. "You're opening wormholes," Velron whispered. Hal nodded. "Not to attack. To show you something." On the holomap, portals bloomed across systems, each revealing flashes of alien planets now harboring humans. Children running through alien streets, teaching local species how to plant crops. Soldiers and refugees sharing meals. Laughter. Trade. The war wasn't spreading destruction. It was spreading culture. Velron stared, uncomprehending. "You share even in vengeance." Hal's smile turned faintly wistful. "We don't separate the two anymore. That's what scares you, isn't it?" Before Velron could answer, the image glitched again. For a fraction of a second, the human surroundings changed, the bunker replaced by a star map, one glowing red, pulsing at its center. "Where are you broadcasting from?" the Archduke barked. Hal hesitated. Then, quietly, "Home." The transmission cut. Velron's aide scrambled. "Trace it." One shouted, "Origin unknown." It bounced through 7,000 civilian satellites before reaching us. Another trembled. "Sir, that number. 7,157 nodes exactly." Velron froze. The exact number of women they had executed. The room fell silent. Only the faint hum of failing circuits filled the air. "Sir," an officer whispered, "what are your orders?" Velron looked out into the dark. For the first time, he felt something alien stirring in his chest, something that hurt to name. "We fight," he said. "Not for dominance. For understanding. If they're gods, we'll learn what makes them bleed. If they're men, we'll learn what makes them rise." The officer hesitated. "And if they're both?" Velron's voice was quiet. "Then we pray." He turned away, leaving the command room in shadow. Alone, he pressed a claw to his console and reopened the frozen recording of Hal's last words. The man had smiled even as his world burned. There was something monstrous in that gentleness. Something holy. Across the fleet, preparations began. Dreadnoughts loaded weapons, cruisers realigned their drives, and 1,000,000,000 lives braced for the final act of a war that no longer felt like strategy, but prophecy. Velron's reflection stared back from the glass. For the first time, he didn't see an emperor. He saw prey trying to comprehend the hunter that still smiled while bleeding. A tremor rippled through the ship, small, rhythmic. The heart beat again. Louder now. He could feel it in the deck plating, the walls, the air. It wasn't sound anymore, it was presence. Suddenly, every monitor flashed white. A single phrase appeared across the system in bold Terran script. "Project Erebus. Activation sequence initiated." Velron's throat tightened. "Erebus, what is that?" No one answered. From the black between stars, something vast began to move. Light folding into shape, geometry too perfect to be natural. It wasn't a ship. It was a reflection. A mirrored projection spanning entire sectors. Then, softly, through every speaker, Hal's voice, calm, amused, terrifying. "You called us sentimental. We just called it remembering." The reflection solidified, and the Empire's scanners identified its form. A massive construct built from stolen light. The shape of a human face, eyes closed, expression peaceful. It was the face of one of the executed women. Velron whispered, "What have you done?" And across the void, the face's eyes opened, glowing blue. Hal's voice returned, quieter now, almost kind. "She's going to finish what you started." The lights across the Empire dimmed to black. The heartbeat stopped. And in the silence that followed, every star began to tremble. The stars flickered like dying candles as the Empire's last fortress world, Valor, orbited its silent sun. The once golden planet was now wrapped in the shadows of thousands of retreating dreadnoughts, scarred, broken, and terrified. The great fleets that had ruled galaxies for millennia hung motionless, waiting for orders that would never come. Inside the command spire, Archduke Velron stared at a holographic sky filled with ghosts. Entire sectors blinked red, then black. The human signal, that cursed heartbeat, pulsed across every frequency, synchronized with their dying systems. He had come to understand that the sound wasn't just communication, it was invasion through emotion. Humanity had found a way to weaponize memory itself. The chamber doors slid open. The Emperor's remaining proxy, rebuilt in a skeletal shell, glided forward. Its voice had lost its regal tone. Now it rasped like wind through bones. "Archduke, long-range sensors detect an approaching fleet. Origin, Sol." Velron didn't turn. "How many?" "Countless," said the machine. "But the readings are inconsistent. The mass fluctuates between ships, signals, and," it hesitated, "echoes." Velron's claws twitched. "They're not ships. They're shadows of ships. Reflections. Your metaphor lacks logic." "It's not a metaphor," he said, eyes narrowing. "It's a warning." Outside, the stars dimmed again. The darkness was not absence, but presence. Space itself seemed to bend under a pulse that rippled through the vacuum. The sound was faint at first, almost like rain. Then it grew, rhythmic and steady, matching the heartbeat that had haunted the Empire for months. The fleet trembled as readings spiked into impossibility. "Audio contamination," shouted a technician. "Signal resonance is destabilizing reactor cores." "Mute it," Velron roared. But the sound wasn't coming from the speakers. It was coming from within. The Emperor's proxy flickered, its body shuddering as human laughter crackled through its voice. "You can't mute memory." Then it exploded into static. Velron turned toward the viewport, and for the first time, he saw them. The human fleet. It emerged not from hyperspace, but from reflected light, blooming into existence like fireflies in oil. Thousands of ships, each etched with glowing names. Ruth, Amira, Joanna, May. Every name a woman the Empire had slaughtered. They came not as soldiers, but as symbols, the resurrected souls of vengeance, given shape and motion. And at the center of them all, one ship glowed brighter than the rest. It wasn't large or heavily armed, but its energy signature eclipsed suns. It projected a single human face across the void, the same woman who had appeared before, serene and terrible. Her voice filled every channel, every neural implant, every mind that dared to listen. "You killed us to quiet the galaxy," she said. "Now hear what silence sounds like when it wakes." Velron's hearts hammered in his chest. Defensive formation. All ships fire. The Empire's dreadnoughts unleashed oceans of plasma. The beams streaked across the void and vanished before impact, swallowed by invisible folds of space. Then came the return. The same energy, mirrored perfectly, tearing through the Imperial lines. Velron stumbled as explosions painted the heavens in white fire. His fleet was dying to its own reflection. From the chaos, a communication line opened. Hal Gibson's voice came through, calm and almost gentle. "Archduke, you there?" Velron's scales shimmered under the red emergency lights. "Show yourself, human." A hologram flickered to life in front of him. Hal stood aboard a command deck bathed in gold, surrounded by silent crew members. He wore no armor, no uniform, only a simple gray coat and that damn smile. "Hard to get a good connection out here," Hal said. "Galaxy's a bit loud tonight. Is this revenge?" Velron spat. "You destroy everything. Your species ours for pride?" Hal shook his head. "You still think this is about pride? It's about balance. You burned a piece of our soul, so we lit the rest on fire. Fair trade." "Fair." Velron's voice cracked. "You call annihilation fair?" Hal's gaze softened. "No, I call it inevitable." The Archduke's breath came fast, his claws digging into the console. "You don't understand what you've unleashed. The stars themselves are destabilizing. You'll kill every living thing, including your own people." Hal looked out at the glowing woman's face in the sky. "We're not killing stars, Archduke. We're teaching them how to remember us." As if responding to him, the light around Valor began to twist. Every particle of the sun folded inward, forming a luminous vortex. It was beautiful and horrifying. The gravitational pull tore ships from their orbits, flinging them into the whirl of light. Yet through the chaos, the human fleet stayed steady, motionless, resolute. Velron's aide screamed as the fortress shuddered. He clung to the console, snarling, "You're destroying reality." Hal's image flickered, then stabilized. "Reality was never yours to control. You thought dominance was permanence. But humans, we build meaning out of endings." "Why call it war, then?" Velron demanded. "If all you wanted was poetry?" Hal smiled faintly. "Because sometimes poetry needs an explosion to be heard." A brilliant white beam shot from the vortex, slicing through Valor's outer defense ring. The blast didn't incinerate, it rewrote. Every impacted ship turned to light, dissolving into glittering fragments that drifted gently through space, like snow. Velron watched in awe and horror. "What have you done to them?" Hal's eyes reflected the glow. "Set them free." A tear formed in the Archduke's outer membrane, a sign of dehydration, he told himself. Not weakness. He turned toward the viewport. Then finish it. If this is your vengeance, do it cleanly. Hal's voice softened. It's not vengeance anymore. It's remembrance. The hologram faded. The human fleet began to move, slowly, gracefully, forming a vast ring around Valor. At its center, the luminous face smiled gently, and the heartbeat returned, now joined by faint whispers, voices overlapping, speaking in thousands of languages, yet meaning one thing. We remember. Velron's command crew began to weep, not out of sorrow, but from the unbearable resonance of it. The sound wasn't violent, it was beautiful, too beautiful to survive. Panels cracked, systems overloaded, and still the heartbeat grew louder. The Archduke fell to his knees. Around him, his empire disintegrated not with explosions, but with light, the kind that feels like forgiveness twisted into consequence. He looked up one last time as the human woman's face filled the sky. "Why me?" he whispered. "Why let me live this long?" Her eyes blinked, and her voice, impossibly gentle, answered, "Because someone has to tell the story." The fortress began to crumble. Fire and light consumed the command chamber. Velron's vision blurred as his body dissolved molecule by molecule into radiant dust. Yet, in his final moments, he didn't feel pain. He felt warmth, an echo of something he'd never known. Mercy. Far above, the vortex reached its crescendo, collapsing inward into a blinding sphere. The human fleet vanished into it, absorbed by the light they had created. Across the galaxy, sensors recorded the same event repeating in every human-occupied system. One by one, they disappeared, taking their vengeance with them, leaving only silence. The universe exhaled. Days later, or perhaps centuries, time fractured in the aftermath. Velron opened his eyes. He stood in a vast white plain, weightless and calm. Around him drifted fragments of memory, laughter, children, a sunset over an ocean he'd never seen. Then he heard footsteps. Hal Gibson approached, hands in his coat pockets, expression neither cruel nor kind. "Guess you made it through," he said softly. "Is this death?" Velron asked. "Something like it," Hal said. "Erebus wasn't destruction. It was transition. We folded reality into memory. Everything that ever lived gets to keep existing, just differently." Velron's eyes darted to the glowing horizon. "You ended the universe to build a story." Hal smiled faintly. "Stories outlast universes. Yours will too, if you learned anything." "And you?" Velron asked. "What do you become?" Hal looked up, and his reflection stretched into the stars. "The narrator," he said simply. "Every world needs one." The Archduke lowered his gaze. "Then tell it well, human. Tell them we were proud." Hal's voice was soft but firm. "I'll tell them you learned." A wind moved through the endless plain, carrying the faint echo of 7,000 names, each glowing like a star. Hal turned away, fading with the light, his final words drifting across eternity. "You killed our women to erase us. We remembered them to erase you." The stars pulsed once, twice, and then the heartbeat returned, slow, steady, infinite. And somewhere in the silence between galaxies, a single word lingered, carved into the fabric of time itself. War.